I'm Professor Benson Igboin. I'm the immediate past head of department, Religion and African Culture at Adekunle Ajasin University. I'm also a professor in the University of South Africa, a professor extraordinary. I also owned a research fellowship with the University of South Africa for the past 7 years. I'm married with 2 children. That's a very long story. I actually wanted to study English language. So my first university of choice was University of Ibadan. So actually that year, 1992, I scored 3 points above the cutoff point. So I thought admission was going to be automatic. So I went to Ibadan, I started lectures. I had attended lectures for 3 weeks with the assurance that I was going to be admitted. But to my shock, I wasn't admitted. So when I tried to find out what was responsible for that, I was told that Ondo State, which is my area of origin, was not a catchment area. So I sat for JAMB again. So I took University of Benin. Again, I wasn't admitted. That the cutoff I scored was not up to their cutoff. So well, religious studies was my second choice. So I decided to go back to Edo State University, and eventually I gained admission to study religious studies. All right, let me take the word religion. If you look at the word religions, you have Hinduism, you have Buddhism, you have Jainism, you have Sikhism, you have Zoroastrianism, you have Taoism, you have Confucianism, you have Shintoism, you have Judaism, you have Islam, you have Baha'ism, you have Christianity, you have Islam. Then you now say African traditional religion. Does anything strike you there? The question is, why African traditional religion? Why did you dash Africa word religion? Just that term, religion. So you can see the colonial thing. Why didn't we say Jewish traditional religion in reference to Christianity? Why didn't we say Arabian traditional religion in reference to Islam? Why couldn't we say Chinese traditional religion in reference to Taoism or Confucianism that came from China? So these are biases that Africans have had to contend with. And so when the earliest anthropologists came to Africa, they said there were no beliefs, that everything in Africa was dark, and darkness is what defined Africa. So it was towards independence, specifically in 1956, that they began to award us the word religion. And so they said African traditional religion. Why wouldn't we say Jewish traditional religion and all of those? Why did they dash us the whole word religion? And we are running with it. The Yoruba worldview, the Yoruba belief system, is it a religion? Edo, the way we practice religion. Urobo people or the Hausa before the Fulani Fulanized the Hausa dynastics. Didn't they have their belief? So that's why we content the word, because the word religion as a concept does not have equivalent in Africa. And that has been established in scholarship. But we have what we believe in. The Yoruba man, the Yoruba woman has what he or she believes in. And those beliefs are very defined and settled, and they know how they went about it. But we cannot talk exclusively about religion without culture, because every religion in the world evolved from particular cultures. And this is what many people are missing. So Christianity evolved within the Jewish culture, and like we're gisting before this interview, I said that the form of it took place in Egypt. right in Africa here, even though they want to deny that. I've also told you that the Garden of Eden is not in the West, it's not in Asia, it's in Africa. They should go to Genesis chapter 1, 2, 3. All of these things are there as in the earliest part. But again, the culture is the definitive outer structural aspect of every religion, such that the culture and its components define what a particular religion does in a particular society before it lives there and begins to influence others. Let me cite an example. Before the second advent of Christianity, second in the sense that I've told you that Christianity is not strange to Africa. In fact, we played more important role than any other continent apart from Israel. So when it came formally to Africa, what did we find? The first thing was to demonize the African culture and worldview. And once you succeed in demonizing a people's worldview, you have captured such people and you begin to enslave them. Like Professor Leo Igboin argued that during colonial period, we did not know who came to colonize or who came to missionize. Because the colonial religion, Christianity, that we practice today, was not different from political colonialism. And so they tell us our belief system, our cultural system, our health system, they were all demon-based systems. And so we accepted it. Our policing system was also demonized, the age group system. And they gave us a formal police system, which today is the worst police in the world. Because the colonial police, as you know, Prof, was created to protect the colonial authorities against the black man. And that is why you see a black policeman or a policewoman would, kill a black person and protecting the so-called white person. And so this, because of the cultural emasculation that we went through, it affected our mental belief, such that we begin to see Christianity, we begin to see Islam and other foreign religions as superior. But I ask a question. Within the Christian fold, the law of conscience, before even the Ten Commandments, is the law of God in theology that God would use. And so my great-grandfather who never heard of Christianity will not go to hell, because he will be judged by the law of conscience, which was universal and is still universal about that. So the codification of these laws into 10 commandments that we have got is not Christianity that says you should not fornicate in Africa. It's not Christianity that says you should not kill. It's not Christianity that taught the African man you should not commit adultery. It's not Christianity that told us we should not bear false witness against our neighbors. It's not Christianity that told us the morals that we imbibe. They were there in our culture. Let's go back to the village and see these old men. These things were there. If you do that, if you slept with somebody else's wife, you don't come and you don't confess. The gods the spirits are there. They fish you out. In my place, Prof, if you stood up from that chair and you were still within the visible parameter of this place, if I sat there, I have committed adultery with you. Yes. And so I had to bring forth a cock to cleanse you before you could cook for your husband. If I go to the rope and I mistakenly took your wrapper and tie it around my waist, I have committed adultery. So it was as strong as that in many African cultural and religious belief system. So it wasn't all of these religions that brought, and these are some of the things that we mix up. That's why I'm talking about our culture and our religious belief systems, that they were very strong in morals. And two, is the fact that you were not waiting for judgment to come hereafter, because you knew whenever you offended any of this, you breach any of these moral laws, you are going to be punished by the society or by the ancestors. And so there was quick judgment and punishment, which prevented many people from committing moral sins and evils at that time. Let me say this. There is the need for us to go back to micro societies and begin to interrogate our cultures and their relationship with women, men, and then gender as we have it today. In my place, if you're doing in Edo, Onwa, because of all of this gender and culture and religion, I went back home. I began a study since 2018. The first question I asked is, why do they call my mother Owisagwa, the daughter of Isagwa? Okay. A woman who had married to my father in 1957. See, today, I was at home last week. They still call my mother Owisagwa. My father, I will just, let me tell it means the daughter of Isagwa. The father of my mother is called Isagwa. So my mother was married in 1957. She has not lost her identity. Nobody says the wife of Anthony Igboin. My father is Anthony Igboin. Nobody calls my mother the wife of Anthony Igboin. They call my mother the daughter of Isagwa. I went around the community, these elderly women, my mother is 85 now, 84, 85. So all of this, it was not a formal study. I just wanted to, what is this woman called? Every woman is called by, every married woman till now is still called by her father's name, not by the husband's name. That would be intriguing and interesting. Two, if a married woman dies, you cannot bury her in her husband's house. You must take her back to her own family house. Because at the time of marriage, we are giving you this beautiful woman to go and multiply you, to go and make your family do, but we are not selling her to you. So she must come back to be with the ancestors and ancestresses in her home family home. And if you must say, well, I want to bury my mother, you have to go and negotiate that with her family. Why? I pick up one thing, the issue of identity. A woman, in my place, does not, by marriage or by death, lose her identity. But the problem started when Christianity and Western education, colonialism came, where you have to be formally registered. You want to be baptized, you want a baptismal certificate, which started in 1907. In my place, you needed to be registered. And the colonial authority or the church authority will not want a woman to write her father's name on the baptismal certificates.
So practically they imported their own culture
and imposed
that
on the culture of the people. And that is why I said we need to go back to micro societies to know what was there before the colonial thing. And that's part of the investigations that since 2018, like I told you, I've been trying to do. So if you so since you have to be formally registered, now that you are registered, what happens? So you have shifted your identity from that of your family to that of your husband. And so that process began, and in African identity construction and maintenance and preservation, construction, maintenance, and preservation. Do I tell you something? As a man, as a woman in our generation, I am dead as a person. Igboin is dead. Do I explain it to you? Good. I'm bearing Igboin. My father's name is Anthony. Nobody is bearing Anthony, so Anthony is lost. My children are bearing Igboin. I'm dead and lost.
So who is Igboin?
My grandfather. I didn't know him. My father who knew him, nobody is bearing Anthony. My children now, they are bearing Igboin, not even my name, not even their grandfather, their great-grandfather.
Great-grandfather.
So, my father is dead, I am dead, my name is dead, because in Africa, once you have lost your name, you have lost your personality, and you have lost your essence. So, you can begin to see how the formal registration that started as a kind of baptismal certification began to kill us. Began to take all of this out, and you begin to see the gulf that is being created by what we have accepted as civilization. So that again has a huge import on the woman. How? Like I told you, the woman now doesn't bear her father's name. She now bears her husband's name. And then there is no connection with where she came from. Okay. So that's how the culture and the accepted colonial authorities and colonial Christianity affected the gender conception of many African micro societies and communities before now. But whether we like it or not, we have come to this formalization system, and we now see it as the civilization we have to pursue. And since we are now taking it as our own way of life, that if I tell you, okay, let's go back, you will now begin to think as the 21st century man and woman, I cannot go back to the dark ages. Well, again, if we go back to history and we read some of these things, during the Middle Ages of the Europeans, many African kingdoms were flourishing. And we had very powerful women behind the thrones, and also on the thrones in many of the sites. It wasn't all that it was 100%. There is no time and there is no society where we never had these struggles. Like I said, once we institutionalized anything, it becomes a kind of cast on the stone, and the struggle to balance up would naturally start. Now, we are told that Abraham Lincoln defined democracy as what? The government of the people, by the people, and for the people. Who were the people? Were women voting at that time when he defined it? So women were not people, they were not humans. Isn't it? That's from the Western world. God. In 1948, when the Universal the declarations, were made, was there any African country? We were all being colonized. And so how universal was that in the real sense of it? I'm not condemning these universal struggles, but I see that in many instances that we do not come back. Let's look at how our societies were before now and what resources can we get from our homes, from our cultures, from our this, because we have again also stereotyped our cultures in such a way to see that pre-colonial African cultures were this, were that. We've read so much about them. That's why, like I said, let's go back to our micro communities. Of their daughter. Does he have a farm? Passionate. God is merciful. God is gracious. God is loving. God is all loving. God is kind. These are feminine Greek words. Fail me if you want to fail me. And she walked out of the class.